The environment is a study in controlled preservation, a sensory contradiction where the fragility of history meets the ruthlessness of institutional safeguarding.
It is here, within the deep recesses of national archives and corporate trust vaults, that the forensic journey begins.
The air is dense, heavy, with the specific, inescapable smell of lignin decay. The sweet, almost vanilla-like scent of paper aged under duress.
Mingled with the sharp, cool tang of industrial ozone produced by meticulous climate control systems.
Fluorescent lights cast a flat, shadowless glow over rows of steel shelving, illuminating not just documentation, but evidence of deliberate management.
We are pursuing the phenomenon of the threshold document. This is not the document that has been totally destroyed, shredded, or subjected to fiery elimination. Those documents represent failure or panic. The threshold document represents mastery. It is the precise historical record, meticulously preserved and often legally cataloged, that traces a complex, controversial truth with unflinching accuracy, guiding the researcher to the very threshold of ultimate revelation, only to stop cold.
The cessation is always intentional, frequently precise, and sometimes devastatingly artistic in its finality.
The silence held within these pages is not empty, it is pressurized, reflecting the psychological tension inherent in secrets preserved but never actually revealed. The pause is the truth. This analysis focuses on 5 distinct types of records, each an exemplary model of the forensic pause, illustrating how highly placed omissions function less as gaps and more as structural pillars of enforced obscurity. These documents are characterized by an absolute fidelity to fact, right up to the critical moment where culpability is assigned or motivation defined. The first document emerges from the dusty administrative archaeology of criminal justice, a remnant of a decades-old cold case, classified under the designation Operation Chiron. It is an expansive, brittle investigative log, secured not by standard folders, but by heavy, oversized manila envelopes. Their seams reinforced with institutional-grade adhesive tape that has yellowed and cracked like old varnish. These folders are tied with faded red string, the symbolic marker of internal agency scrutiny, knotted stiffly where it has bitten into the softened paper fibers over time. The logs within span 11 years of continuous effort, charting a complex tapestry of evidence gathering. The forensic detail contained in these initial pages is exhaustive. There are micro-transcripts of initial witness interviews, grainy photographs affixed with brittle archival glue, inventories of physical evidence cataloged down to the micron of fiber, and travel manifests detailing the movements of investigative personnel across multiple continental jurisdictions. The chronology is flawless. Every lead, whether fruitful or a dead end, is meticulously logged, stamped with date and time indicators. The structure is one of unrelenting cumulative pressure building toward the primary suspect, a figure identified in the records only by the alphanumeric designation S77. The narrative flow of the log meticulously documents the evolution of the investigation, the shift from surveillance to direct inquiry, the gradual tightening of the legal net, the coordination with specialized task forces, and finally, the issuance and execution of the warrant for interview. The preceding entry, dated 09:45 hours on a Tuesday morning in late autumn, describes the preparation of the interview suite, the setup of recording equipment, and the precise legal counsel present. The text is tight, formal, and bureaucratic, yet vibrates with the underlying tension of imminent resolution. Then comes the stop. The entry detailing the primary suspect's final conclusive interview, the moment that determines guilt or innocence, that forces the acknowledgement of accountability, is conspicuously missing.
The location on the ledger where the transcript and summary of that 3-hour confrontation should reside is blank. It is not an error of transcription or a simple misplaced sheet. The following page, which jumps immediately to the post-interview administrative debriefing and the preparation of the indictment recommendation, carries the evidence of the excision. In the lower right-hand corner, where the archival control markings reside, there is a heavily inked corporate security stamp bearing 3 words, rendered in stark, aggressive serif font, withdrawn. Date 1989/03/14. The act of stamping is forceful. The black ink has bled slightly into the brittle paper fibers. This stamped withdrawal date acts as a monument to the absent truth. It suggests not that the interview failed or that the suspect confessed to an irrelevant detail, but that the content was so definitive, so structurally dangerous to the underlying political or corporate framework that allowed the original crime to occur, that its record had to be administratively removed and entombed elsewhere, perhaps permanently. The investigators did their job, but the truth they uncovered was deemed too potent for public or even internal circulation. The red string ties the folders, securing the long chain of facts that deliver the researcher right up to the impenetrable black square of the withdrawal stamp, forcing the realization that the silence surrounding S77 is the most damning piece of evidence of all. The second exemplar of the threshold document shifts the focus from legal culpability to financial architecture, dwelling within the cold, polished mahogany environment of corporate forensic accounting.
This is a massive, authoritative, leather-bound financial ledger sourced from the liquidation of a collapsed international holding company known only by its regulatory registration, the Centaur Group. The company's failure was cataclysmic, resulting in global market destabilization and widespread allegations of massive, systemic illicit capital transfer.
The ledger itself is an artifact of imposing wealth and meticulous, almost obsessive bookkeeping. The binding is thick, tanned oxblood leather, now scuffed at the corners, but still radiating a solid institutional weight. The pages within are thick, high rag content paper, edged in gilt that catches the archival light. The script is the fastidious hand of a professional bookkeeper, rendered in deep black fountain pen ink, detailing every transaction, every balance sheet adjustment, every quarterly dividend from the company's inception until its final week of operation. The numbering sequence is the key. Every page, every line entry confirms the integrity of the record. We trace the transactions across the centuries-old paper-based system, observing the flow of funds through subsidiary structures, offshore trusts, and complex intercompany loans. The entries are exhaustive, documenting billions in capital movement. The specific scrutiny focuses on the period immediately preceding the regulatory collapse, during which several massive, untraceable deposits vanished into the global ether. The ledger guides the researcher through a series of internal transfers that steadily compress the illicit capital into a singular, traceable stream, funneling toward a specific, crucial moment. The final, definitive transfer out of Centaur's custody into a designated, anonymous clearinghouse. The page numbering proceeds flawlessly: 399, 400, 401. These pages contain the precise documentation of the aggregation of funds, the calculated foreign exchange conversions, and the preparation of the transfer instruction. Page 401 concludes with a total sum and the notation, "Authorization for final wire transfer initiated. See P402. Page 402 is missing. It has not been accidentally torn out. It has been surgically, professionally excised. The cut is clean and straight, achieved perhaps with a scalpel or a professional guillotine blade, executed with the cold precision of an operator who understood the legal weight of what they were removing. Only a faint, razor-thin line remains where the spine held the sheet. The deliberate nature of the removal is further emphasized by the evidence left on page 403. Page 403, which details the subsequent audit trails and attempts by junior staff to reconcile the missing funds after the fact, bears the faint spectral impression of ink. When held under oblique forensic lighting, the mirror image of text from the removed page 402 is visible, pressed into the absorbent fibers of the following sheet.
This ghost impression, a shadow of the ultimate transaction, confirms that the page contained the destination account number, the signatory authorizing the transfer, and the precise moment of severance.
The surgical removal of page 402 severs the traceability of the illicit capital at the absolute point of transfer. The preceding pages prove the crime happened. The following pages prove the cover-up ensued. But the specific identity of the recipient of the funds, the ultimate beneficiary, remains suspended in the missing space, archived only as a faint reverse image trace. The financial ledger proves the mechanism, but the carefully engineered absence denies the identity. The silence here is expensive, calibrated to protect the apex predators who utilized the Centaur Group as a final dispersal point. The heavy leather binding guards the emptiness at its heart. Our third category of threshold document takes us into the sterile, high-security environment of scientific innovation, the realm where pure research collides with strategic necessity. This file is a confidential scientific memorandum, typewritten on heavyweight bond paper, detailing breakthroughs achieved during a highly sensitive, government-funded experimental project known internally as the Helios Initiative. The research involved proprietary materials science and theoretical physics concerning concepts that, if fully realized, promised transformative military or industrial advantages. The memorandum begins with the objective tone characteristic of high-level scientific documentation. It details the hypothesis, the methodological setup, and the rigorous data collection process. Paragraphs are dense with technical jargon, equations, thermodynamic models, and complex metrics.
Interspersed throughout the text are intricate, highly detailed technical diagrams rendered in precise black ink, illustrating the experimental apparatus and the proposed schematic for applied use.
The data analysis sections are comprehensive, providing verifiable proof of concept and quantifiable outcomes that exceed established benchmarks. The authors, listed only by internal identification numbers, build an irrefutable case for the breakthrough's success. The document proceeds through the obligatory sections: error analysis, peer review cross-referencing, material sourcing, and estimated resource allocation for scaling the project. Every aspect of the scientific achievement is dissected, verified, and presented as a complete, self-contained record of technological advancement. The information is so rich and precise that it establishes, without question, the operational reality and strategic value of the findings. The narrative abruptly concludes on what should be the final page, the section dedicated to implementation recommendations and future strategic planning. Instead, the detailed technical diagrams and data analysis give way to an almost entirely blank sheet. The last typed line on the preceding page directs the reader to the conclusion summary, but there is no summary. The only mark on the final page is a classification stamp, aggressively applied in deep violet ink. The stamp is hand-applied, suggesting an immediate, physical administrative intervention rather than a routine automated classification. The text within the rectangle of the stamp reads, Security Classification, Level 6, Priority. Below this professionally rendered type, someone has handwritten 3 words, scrawled quickly in heavy black pen, almost overwriting the official stamp. Immediate operational freeze. The contrast between the preceding 100 pages of clean, objective, precise typography and the singular, messy, handwritten notation is jarring. The technical data provided the solution. The level 6 stamp provided the silence.
This pause is not about protecting the identity of a criminal or the source of a transaction. It is about protecting the existence of the solution itself.
The implication is that the breakthrough was so profound, so strategically asymmetrical,
that its mere documentation, even within highly classified channels, represented an unacceptable risk. The science was completed successfully, but the findings were instantly interred, deemed too powerful for either implementation or even internal discussion.
The absence of the conclusion summary means the strategic intent of the research is severed from the scientific outcome.
The researcher is left holding a flawless blueprint for a world-changing technology that has been deliberately condemned to perpetual dormancy by a single violet ink classification stamp. The fourth document takes us into the critical sphere of military accountability and command structure, the Highly Classified After-Action Report, or AAR, concerning a controversial operational deployment known as Operation Ironclad. This deployment, conducted in a volatile international sector, resulted in significant, publicly debated collateral damage and subsequent political fallout, raising severe questions regarding operational parameters and liability. The AAR is a masterpiece of bureaucratic thoroughness, bound professionally in matte gray cardstock, and sealed with tamper-evident holograms that confirm its integrity upon access. The report's purpose is twofold: to provide an accurate record of events on the ground and to establish the chain of authority that greenlighted the action. The narrative component is exhaustive. It details troop movements minute by minute, cross-referenced with satellite telemetry and communications logs. It includes intricate, high-resolution tactical maps marked with specific grid coordinates, showing engagement zones, logistical supply lines, and retreat vectors. The language is precise, using codified military terminology. Ordnance expended, personnel sustained kinetic contact, engagement parameters observed. The document meticulously establishes the competence and adherence to procedure by every ground unit involved. It proves that the tactical execution of the mission was flawless, detailing the specific moment the controversial action was taken, and justifying it based on immediate localized threats as perceived by the commanding officer on the scene. The initial sections establish a clear sequence of events that places the responsibility for the execution of the mission squarely upon the deployed personnel, justifying their actions entirely based on the doctrine of immediate self-defense and operational necessity. The document is designed to deflect any accusation of tactical negligence. However, the mandatory structure of any official AAR requires a final crucial section, the Command Authorization Annex. This annex is designed specifically to trace the operational order from the ground commander backward through intermediary command posts, up to the single specific civilian or military executive authority who issued the final overarching deployment directive. This section answers the political question, who ordered the mission? The narrative of Operation Ironclad proceeds smoothly through every tactical decision point, every movement, until the final page of the operational summary. The structure is set for the annex to begin. The final sentence of the tactical summary reads, "Deployment authorized per Directive 77 Alpha as mandated by the authorizing high command structure designated in the following annex."
But the annex is absent.
The subsequent page is a mandatory form, Form D400R, the High Command Authorization Record. This page is designed to contain a pre-printed matrix with fields for the names, ranks, and signatures of the authorizing authority at Level 1, Executive Command, Level 2, Strategic Oversight, and Level 3, Operational Approval. The page is present, but every field is blank. There are no names, no signatures, no dates of authorization. The form is stark white, immaculate, untouched by ink or stamp. The administrative staff responsible for cataloging the report have noted the omission on an attached post-it note.
a brightly colored, jarringly informal administrative flag against the gray military formalism. The note, clipped lightly to the page, states simply, "Auth structure pending. See Archive Note 442-B." The deliberate maintenance of the blank form creates the legal and administrative pause. The physical presence of the form underscores the fact that accountability is legally mandated, yet the emptiness of the required fields ensures that the chain of liability is severed precisely at the point where it ascends past the field commanders and enters the realm of political decision-makers. The military report meticulously confirms what happened, but the untouched form ensures that the question of who initiated it remains administratively suspended in perpetuity. The documents end exactly where the accountability begins. Finally, we turn to the most intimate and haunting example of the threshold document, the personal testimonial. This is a thick sheaf of handwritten notes, sourced from the unsecured private archive of a key witness, a civilian who possessed direct, non-institutional knowledge concerning the internal operations of a powerful, shadowy regulatory body. The notes were submitted posthumously, having been discovered years after the witness's sudden, unexplained disappearance. The paper is fragile, yellowed legal pad stock, the edges softened and dog-eared from constant handling. The scent here is different from the institutional archives. It carries the faint trace of human domesticity, perhaps old coffee stains, a slight mustiness, suggesting that the writing was done quickly, privately, perhaps fearfully, over many long nights. The testimony is a raw, unedited stream of consciousness, a narrative written under duress. The witness details the sequence of events with profound personal investment. The handwriting itself is a graphological diary. At times, the script is clean, firm, and authoritative, reflecting moments of clarity and conviction. At other times, it devolves into a nervous, frantic scrawl, reflecting moments of high anxiety or exhaustion. The pages are filled with crossed-out mistakes, arrows pointing to insertions, and circled names, real or coded, that the writer was struggling to remember or verify. The narrative paints a compelling picture of institutional pressure, describing clandestine meetings in parking garages, coded telephone calls, and the slow, chilling realization that the regulatory body they worked for was not upholding justice, but actively facilitating systematic illegality. The witness details the dates, times, and specific methods used to obscure the truth. The narrative functions as an emotional confession and a detailed indictment, a fragile monument to a person fighting desperately to unload a dangerous truth. The pace accelerates as the witness closes in on the apex of the conspiracy. They begin to describe a specific meeting, detailing the atmosphere of the room, the hushed voices, and the identity of the central figure whose actions served as the keystone of the entire operation. The handwriting becomes tight, small, and fast, suggesting a sudden rush of information, or perhaps a desperate urgency to record the final, most crucial details before time ran out. The notes stop mid-sentence. The final page contains a description of the location of the definitive meeting, followed by the first half of a key disclosure. The witness is writing about the moment the central conspirator lifted a document from the table and made a definitive statement.
And then he looked up from the dossier and he said that we needed to ensure absolute control over the narrative before anyone noticed the shift in.
The pen stroke fades into the yellowed fiber of the paper. It is not a purposeful period or a concluding flourish. It is a literal cessation of motion. The ink, applied with high pressure in the beginning of the word shift, thins out rapidly, becoming a pale gray-blue trail that simply ceases to deposit pigment onto the page. The tail of the final letter, T, trails off into a hair-thin line, dissolving into the paper's structure, signaling a definitive and unexplained silence.
This is the most visceral of the threshold documents because the pause is physical.
It is the physical record of interruption. It suggests that the witness was stopped, perhaps by fear, perhaps by exhaustion, or perhaps by external intervention.
At the exact moment of naming the final, crucial motive or operational detail. The testimony has provided all the scaffolding of the conspiracy, yet the key structural load-bearing beam, the final word, is left hanging, unfinished, a permanent question mark etched in pale ink. The yellowed paper holds the ghost of the final word, a truth that was on the very tip of the pen, moments away from being immortalized.
These 5 documents, the brittle investigative log, the surgically excised financial ledger, the technically perfect scientific memorandum, the untouched military authorization form, and the trailing pen stroke of the personal testimonial collectively define the concept of the forensic pause.
They illustrate that the most sophisticated, most effective form of truth suppression is rarely total erasure, which often creates curiosity and suspicion. Instead, it is the precise, strategic placement of a definitive and agonizing silence. For the researcher, encountering a threshold document is a profound, frustrating experience.
It is the academic equivalent of standing at the edge of a vast, meticulously mapped continent and finding the final footbridge leading to the capital city has been meticulously vaporized. The work of historical and forensic discovery leads unerringly to a void that is not an accidental oversight, but a highly engineered administrative structure of defense.
The silence itself becomes the loudest evidence, demanding attention.
The documents stand as permanent testaments to institutional power, the power not just to destroy, but to manage the flow of information, the power to frame a narrative perfectly, up to the moment of legal or ethical danger,
And then to invoke an arbitrary, protective mechanism that ensures the vital,
critical truth remains perpetually archived in the space
of non-existence, in the climate-controlled stillness
of these archives,
amidst the heavy scent
of old paper and ozone, the absence of the key word,
the missing sheet,
or the blank form,
confirms a core tenet
of forensic history. Sometimes the greatest truth is preserved exactly where the text ends.